Well, good morning, everybody. And I'll be honest with you, over the weekend, I really didn't foresee something like this taking shape. This is an interesting radar animation. You're watching, of course, the northern plains of the United States, North and South Dakota specifically. And yesterday on Sunday, we watched a highly amplified mid-level flow pattern rip off a series of thunderstorms that did something kind of unique. And what I was specifically watching in this animation, let me just get this pause right about the right spot here, is this storm right here. It almost has the characteristics of what we call a mesoscale convective vortex. It doesn't to me look as though this is some sort of large supercell. It looks like it's taking on the environmental wind shear that was across the northern plains yesterday. And as it went north, right here, watch this thing just move north right there. It produced a series, a family of tornadoes. And I'm going to show it to you. Just look at the storm reports. This is the storm reports. That's real small. There we go. Just look at this right here. 22 reports of tornadoes, north to south, starting in South Dakota, finishing in North Dakota. It's a very rare thing to see tornadoes in September in this area. Oftentimes, if we do, they're closer to the Red River Valley. Just unique. But this is the upper level pattern we were in. And let's make this full screen so we can see a little bit better there. There we go. This is just one of those very highly amplified patterns right here. There's a trough that came through the northwest producing some storms, a trough that was almost making a northward turn here to get around this large ridge. This is where all the heat was over the weekend. And I just wanted to show it to you because it's been a while since I've seen something even similar to that producing a string of tornadoes north to south, especially in the Dakotas. Now, is this indicative of anything as to where we're going in the pattern? I think it is. And we're hunting for signals, honestly. A lot of us are, I think. And the signals are not very strong right now. And I'll show you that by the end of this forecast video. I'll also give you some new updates on South America and some of the rains we saw there. And you're probably going to hear a little bit of excitement in my voice today simply because some of the models are attempting to show precipitation on some of our driest regions. So let's get into it. Here's what happened over the weekend, total precipitation. The models did grab this. I was impressed. Remember, we talked about this last week, the chances for getting these storms to come out of Wisconsin, kind of clip parts of lower Lake Michigan and then get down here to Indiana, and they did. We had isolated storms even in Missouri, one of our areas that is most dry in the country compared to average. But this was well anticipated too. Remember, we talked last week about this being the wettest corridor in this particular setup and the chances for more precipitation getting into the northwest given the troughs that were just lingering offshore. Florida, especially southern Florida, you continue to have extremely wet conditions as there is this kind of stalled out boundary and you're getting plenty of tropical moisture up against that boundary. But in a few moments, I got to talk to you more about what's going on right here off the coast of the Carolinas. So tropically, this is what we've got going on. I love the new maps by Tomerberg's website, Polar Weather. It's POLARWX.com. You can see right up here. He's not got this really great kind of global map. And you know what we're watching for, right? Yes, the tropical Atlantic, the Eastern Pacific. But this is the time of year where I'm to be honest, I'm waiting on something to come out of the West Pacific to do this and then disrupt the jet stream flow across the North Pacific, which will affect the downstream weather across North America. I don't have it. It's just not there. So we got to watch what's going on here on either side of the U.S. and Mexico and then Central America. So let's have a look at this. First, I'm going to give you the latest update on Mario. Mario, of course, named last week. As Mario moves to the north and west, there are some forecast ensemble members, especially from the models we run here in North America, like the GFS and the GFS ensemble, that are attempting to take some of Mario's moisture farther toward California and possibly even into Arizona and Nevada as well. And this is critical given how dry this particular area is. So I'm going to show you a blend of the North American models that we have, all right? And so it's called the NBM, the National Blend of Models. And if we play this forward, take a look. Now this is we're getting into Tuesday. This is now Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. See this moisture coming into Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona. So a lot of this is just kind of what's left of Mario's kind of northeastern side getting into this area. Now, this is not a slam dunk. Like these rainfall totals here are not going to be kind of set in concrete as to what to expect. It's just the idea that some of the remnant moisture from that system could definitely make it into this region. Now, many of you that are watching me in the central U.S. are going, no, tell me more about this too. I need to see how much of that rain is here and getting farther to the east. I'm going to get to that in just a few seconds here. But I want to talk quickly about the Atlantic. Right, we've been looking at this graphic, right, for several weeks. For the past several weeks, we've seen these colors sitting on top of the Atlantic. Okay, so you just kind of match this up vertically. That represents suppression in the upper atmosphere. We knew the lid was going to come off starting around the 15th, and the models have been pretty clear about this. But it's not as though they're just opening up into like perfect conditions as I thought they would going forward. In fact, as we get out there toward the end of September, some of the models are now putting back in a little more suppression here. And as I talked to you about a second ago, I said, there's not a whole lot of kind of pieces fitting together around the world to give us a little bit more clarity in the longer range forecast. And this is one of them. When we see these just stacked up like this and not a moving MJO signal, it becomes very difficult to pick out anything beyond the next couple of weeks. So I will say that we're going to get some more Atlantic activity coming up because of the lid coming off here as we get into the second and third weeks, or finish the second week and get into the third week of September. But beyond that, it's still going to be a bit difficult, I think, to pick out what's going on in the tropics. Now, we have seen the models start to kick off more systems, right? So this is the newest update from the European model, looking at the ensemble members, showing you the tracks of those lows. And while, there's the same old story with the Bermuda High at times going over here, getting the systems to curl around a state of open ocean, which is what we currently see, all right? My attention has to go somewhere else. And you know that I'm watching here as one possible source location. We talked about that a lot last week. We also kept seeing the models attempt to make something off of the Carolina coast. And if you look at some satellite data this morning, take a look at this feature here. In fact, if I just kind of go back and forth just this morning, we can see it. And I'll take a closer look in there in a moment. But my goodness, there's something brewing off here that could possibly dump a bunch of rain into parts of North Carolina, Virginia, which is one of our driest spots. Now, before I go to that, can I just take you back and show you the whole country yesterday? Because there you can see that circulation. You can see the deep low that's got this really meridiana or north-south look to it. There's the wave that came into parts of the northwest, bringing in the showers and storms. Had a fire here continuing. This is the Garnet Fire in California. You can see some of the smoke from that. And there's still quite a bit of wildfire smoke getting into parts of Montana and up toward, this part of Alberta as well. I just wanted you to see this satellite animation. And my goodness, look at these storms. I would have given anything to get some of these storms over to my part of Illinois. They were just scattered in nature, deep. You can see there's shadows, very, very deep storms in the atmosphere. But the main show is here. That was the big strip north to south where those storms ripped off. Now, let's come back to the system just off the coast. We've gotten a sunlight on this morning. There we go, last few frames, where we are starting to see a lot of that cloud cover work its way in toward parts of North Carolina, eventually into Virginia. The deepest storm's still offshore here. There's also a lot of other great stuff on this satellite animation. For example, you can see that the deepest convection is not co-located with the center of circulation, which is telling that this is not going to strengthen rapidly. You can also see the high thin cirrus. See these right here? They're going over the top of this, suggesting that this system's struggling with some wind shear. And you can also see some of the jet contrail over this part of, Mid-South. Well, no, this is the Appalachian Mountains, forgive me, in this area. Just a lot of neat stuff on satellite. But overall, let's get the update. The 12Z should be in. Yeah, look at these rainfall totals we're expecting out of this. Very dry across the rest of the southeast, except for southern Florida, which has been so wet. But we've got some of the forecast models picking up a couple of inches, maybe 3 inches of rainfall from where this system is kind of going through. I want to show it to you on some high-resolution radar reflectivity simulations from the NAM model. As we play it forward, that center of circulation spins, and by tonight into early tomorrow morning, there's going to be some widespread rain out of this. And you can see it through the day on Tuesday into early Wednesday morning, getting toward the mid-Atlantic, and that's about how far out the NAM model will go. Now, while that's all occurring, we still have that amplified pattern I mentioned, so watch the rest of the country here as that one spins. We're going to keep an eye out later today for severe storms coming out of maybe parts of Wyoming into the western side of South Dakota, Nebraska. Also more isolated storms in this region. And then with the bigger low that's moving farther to the north here, there's going to be some storms there as well. This is tonight, getting into tomorrow morning. And by the time we get to midday tomorrow, the low that was moving through the northwest is now leaving Montana and Wyoming. And it will be able to draw some moisture out ahead of it. And that's why we think from Colorado into Kansas, Nebraska, we could be watching for some bigger storms, maybe the southeastern corner of Montana. And remember, this is when that circulation that's just offshore is trying to work its way more into the mid-Atlantic. And maybe some storms leaving parts of Minnesota going into Wisconsin as well. But the heaviest rains, I think, will likely be aligned right here by the time we go through Tuesday and getting into Wednesday morning through midday. We'll have to see how far to the east that storm system eventually makes it. And we're concerned about this just given the next series of maps I'm going to show you. What this is suggesting is that whatever is in here could start to move its way toward these very dry parts where only isolated storms came through over the weekend. That tropical system that's off the coast could be hitting these incredibly dry parts of the mid-Atlantic. We have holes that need filled in before we go any further, into this fall time frame. Just worrying about the effects of fall drought on places, which we've talked extensively about. But I do want to give you the latest update on the ranks. So this, again, starts on August 1st and goes through September 14th. And just to make a point here, these darkest shades represent 133. That means the driest it's been in 133 years. And many of you have been commenting, and I appreciate those comments, about how many days it has been since you've observed precipitation in certain areas. Meanwhile, we do have one spot right here in South Dakota that is having its wettest such stretch of days. Pretty amazing to see the statistics here overall. But as we've been talking about, and I showed last week, if we look back on 10 years of Mississippi River data, find that zero line. It's right here. See if I can draw this straight across. There we go. And what's amazing is, with the exception of fall 2018 and fall 2019, every other year in the last 10 years has seen the river at Memphis drop below low stage. And we're nearly 5 feet below low stage, which means it's trying to approach where we were in 24, in 23, and in 22, which were our 3 previous years where that river got so very, very low. Now, the reason why, we're looking at this is because some of the forecast models are attempting to bring rain to that Mississippi basin. And it's in the day 4 through 10 time frame. That's the 19th through the 25th. And you can see here that the European model, which is the lone model in doing this right now, is attempting to really bring up precipitation in some of those key dry areas. So I'm excited about this because of how incredibly dry it has been, and I would want nothing more than to get a little bit of rain. I know it kind of interrupts harvest, but honestly, to get a little bit of moisture back into the setup here is critical, and we need it. I'm thinking more about just the risk of fires in this area. If the winds start to pick up, oh my goodness, this is a bad setup given how dry things have been. So we better get in there and have a look at the timing of this. I'm going to use the European model. Again, these are the new simulations I'm working on for you here. And as we play this forward, this is through Wednesday, getting into Thursday and Friday. Let's pause it right there. So through the majority of this week, we've got a couple of spots we're watching, right? We've detailed both of those. We understand the moisture chances in those two areas. So that's through Friday. Now we're out there where we're going to start to see this system move forward. And the European model is the most aggressive on this, dropping a cutoff low almost into this area by early next week. And that is why, can you almost see it like spinning there as I go back and forth over Tuesday and Wednesday of next week? That cutoff low that's dropped into this area is where we're expecting to get that rain. That's why it's day 4 through 10, and you're not seeing it in the near term. Now, a couple of other things to point out, because of how far eastward displaced that Bermuda high is, we've got, this is where the potential tropical system is going to be, way, way, way over here. But there is enough moisture that if I just take you out 15 days, might as well do it, that we've got a halfway decent chance of picking up some much, much needed rain. Now, this is not going to break a drought in this area. We need to have more consistent rains in this. And by the way, do not trust the model output. We are simply looking for where the model is putting down precipitation. I'll be honest with you, every time you get into a drought situation like this, I tend to take the model output numbers and cut them in half or even reduce them down to a third because it takes so much effort to overcome, the dry air. But some of you are going, well, wait a minute, how can it possibly make this much moisture? If you're saying the Bermuda high is way over here, isn't that the pump that brings the moisture up? Well, there's more than one way to get moisture out of the Gulf. And you're right, the Bermuda high is way over here. It's still over by the Azores. But as you play the model forward, just take note, we're getting flow that's doing this. So it's not the full tap on the moisture that we can get where it comes straight up like this, like it did for most of summer, but it's around this high. And that high is starting to supply moisture to the central U.S. It's just not the abundant amount of moisture, and it's pulling some of it from Texas and New Mexico and Mexico here. So it's sorry, let's draw that again. It's doing that. So there is moisture. It's just not the full open supply you can get. And don't forget, if you form a low here, that also pulls flow around it like this, and that's what brings in some of that moisture. But the bigger player here, the Bermuda High, I mean, you can just see where the tropical systems are going, right? They're all doing this around that high. So the Bermuda High is not returned, yet we're getting some southerly flow. And that's the point. When you have that southerly flow and you have a trough that comes in, yeah, you'll be able to make some rain out of this. The unfortunate thing is that deep low that you see right here, look at this now. See it pulling it in? That deep low didn't have days and days of antecedent or preceding, I should say, forgive me there, moisture coming in, preceding moisture coming in. It's all right ahead of it just as it forms. So just want to make the point, you can still get that moisture. The bigger picture idea, now that I'm done rambling, is this. The next 10 days, what's the probability of an inch? And I want to point out that this very dry area, the models are suggesting, that probability is 40 to 60%. Let's just cut it in half and say there's a 50% chance in here, these very dry areas, that you've got, an inch coming out of the forecast in the next 10 days. The models are much higher in the probabilities here in the Western Corn Belt, when that's been true for much of this summer as well. Where are we driest? Let's flip this over. Should have got a new model run in here. Let's go down to, let's go back to the 0Z run, take that out to 10 days. There you are. That's the probability of staying under a half inch. And the west is pretty dry in this, so is this part of the Canadian Prairie. We're very dry along the Gulf Coast. No tropical systems that I can think of in the next 10 days that see coming up and hitting this area. We're still dry in the northeast, dry in parts of Ontario. It's been quite wet in this region for a while. But that's kind of your outlook over the next 10 days on the drier spots. Now, what happens at day 10 is also quite interesting, because both the European ensemble, that's what you're looking at here, have dropped a trough in the northwest. So a ridge opens up here. There's a trough, and there's kind of a reflection of a trough in this region. But this is not a blocked pattern. Can you see it open up there? In fact, it dips again here. And the GFS shows the same thing. So look at that. GFS ensemble, European ensemble, 10 days out. Man, it makes me more confident in these two maps. These two right here. Let's blow up the European. If we start to increase the depths of troughs off the west coast, this will open up the pattern. As long as it doesn't go more meridional, it stays west to east, this will start to get things moving across the country, removing these near permanent drier regions. And we're starting just to see better evidence of that going forward. As a consequence of this, our longer range models are starting to back off on the dryness as well. Now, I've shown you these maps going into mid-October for a while, right? Do you now notice how they are not, what did they look like last week? This whole region was just anchored into drought, especially along the Gulf Coast. Well, the newest forecast to, September 19 to October 19, they've backed off on it. And again, this is always a wild card down here. Anything comes out of the tropics, these are all terrible forecasts. But it's no longer as bone dry as it had been, and neither is the European extended. So there's something to this shift in the pattern we've got to pay attention to. And the CPC picked it up on Friday. Take a look at their forecast. They backed off on the extensiveness of the drier weather as we get out there into September, beginning of October. And to be honest with you, I could take some of this now, I think they would as well, and move it a bit further, maybe to the south and southwest of where they have that anchored. I think we have better chances to the north of it. Now, I'm not saying we're going to break this drought. It took us months. It took us 60 days to get into it in pockets here. But there's at least a signal that's trying to come through and change this up a little bit. Temperature-wise, this morning, a couple of areas of frost to keep an eye on here. But over the next 7 days, our frost outlook looks something like this. Mostly at high elevation here in this part of central Oregon, and then here deep into the northeast. This temperature pattern's been amazing, right? I'll be honest with you, it's been a fun one to study. It has not been an interesting one to endure for places, but I want to show it to you again. From the last 10 days of August, for the first 10 days of September, breaking records in the Northwest. You saw the western wildfires. Then we saw extremely cold, persistently cold conditions here. Well, this is what we've seen since the 10th. A complete reversal of the pattern, and even though we're still hot in the parts of the Columbia Basin, that's changed as well. So we've gone from like a top 5 coolest to a top 10 warmest in just that quick flip-flop. And the southeast has cooled off, the southwest has cooled off, parts of it over California has. And where are we going in the temperatures? Well, let's go have a look at it. Here's today's highs. Look at that cloud cover dominating the coolness in parts of Virginia, North Carolina. Midwest, another day in the 90s. Okay, the West Coast warming up here. But you know there's a trough coming into the West Coast. So Thursday into Friday and Saturday, that trough is nearing the West Coast. And by the time we get into next week, there it is. So that's going to keep a lot of warmth overall for the midsection of the country. But where's it going after that? Well, here is, let's go back to the beginning, the next 5 days according to the European Ensemble, sliding this out to day 5 through 10, and then day 10 through 15. Now, the European Ensemble, okay, it shows the trough coming in, but it's still quite mild for much of the rest of the country. What I'm curious about is to compare this to the European Ensemble Artificial Intelligence. Nope, this is not the Ensemble. This is just the single run. There's the next 5 days. That's day 5 through 10. And then this is day 10 through 15. Now, I have been interested in this deep trough here, ridge over the west, and a reflective trough there in the pattern. It seems to be something that keeps showing up. But I want to let you know, it is the European model that is the biggest outlier on cooling this off. Just to give you an example, I went in this morning to the local forecast. So I clicked on this, and I went to Lexington, Kentucky. I picked out a spot that's kind of in this cooler region here. And I want to show you something so you can compare every 6 hours the models to each other, right? You can hover over and see it. We're way out here in the forecast. That is where the artificial intelligence, see it's labeled here, the dots. The AI model is at 43.9 degrees, and the GFS and European are way up here at 63, 62 degrees. And so the spread is huge. 67 for the high on not this next Sunday, but the one following. And, the GFS is at 87. So just understand there's always a lot of spread at this far, but we're looking for a signal that could drop those temperatures. Because some of the models have been sniffing this out for a while. Like this is the new week 3 forecast from the GFS. It's doing that thing we talked about, that Bering Sea issue. See the trough there? Some sort of trough here. Is that long wave pattern going to be a thing? And as it does that, what does it do to the temperatures? Do we send the temperatures back up in the west and cool things off in this area? And that's going to be a question we're going to try to answer here going forward. All right, all of that is to land us here in South America. And then I'll finish up with a note on the long range. So we've kind of seen out the next 2 to 3 weeks. We know that looking back over the last month here in South America, we've been very dry. No early monsoon signal. There's been some heavy rains to the south, but this has been a pretty dry region. Now, what's important when you look at these next couple of maps is to remember where we're looking at the first crop going in for Brazil. Now, they put in, this is not the only crop, I want to be clear on that, but it's the biggest crop that's going to be going into production as soon as the monsoon rains come through. So it's a reminder of the big production areas. Because over the weekend, if you watch this animation here, this is infrared satellite data, but we're using it to infer where there were possibly storms. I'm watching right here in Mato Grosso. So I apologize, it's a little choppy. Maybe if I refresh this, let's play it again. There we go. I'm seeing this, and I'm wanting to know, do we get some meaningful, look at that, that's the next day. That would be on the 14th into this morning. Are we getting better storms in this area? Remember, it was the European model that was going after these more aggressively. And was it enough rainfall? So if we look at it going forward, the European over the next 10 days continues to bring in monsoonal showers here while this is quite dry. What both models are predicting, though, is a front coming through out of the south by way out there, September 22nd. And that front, can you actually see it coming from south to north, bringing in rain and really knocking the temperatures back? And it's not just the European model that has it. This is the GFS. Okay, it's got similar outlook for the next 7-8 days. Then there's the front, 22nd, 23rd. And they're going to want this front. Have you seen the temperatures down there? Let's go to 2-meter temperatures. Okay, look at these highs. So I'm putting a contour on anything that's 40 degrees Celsius. That's like 104. It's very, very hot in some of the models here. And every day those big flashes of heat coming on mean that rain that falls, it evaporates really quickly. But let's play it forward. Just keep your eye on this and watch the front. Ready? This is the 21st, 22nd. See the front? Look at this front just diving through here, knocking these temperatures back and bringing in that rain. And we could have down here in southern Brazil, okay, I do contour 0. So you see that line there. There is no 0 line in here, but it's going to get pretty chilly, single-digit lows. So we're going to keep a close eye on that. Now, you probably noticed, Eric, you didn't stretch this out real far. Like, why aren't you telling me longer range things? Well, what did we spend last week talking about? All of the fall correlations with La Nina. I've got it. I've told you what I know. We're watching the North Pacific. We've covered that in quite a bit of detail. The drought areas we're trying to overcome. Here's our latest soil moisture maps. And the signal from the MJO is terrible. Like, it's kind of parked right here. But it's so close to null space, it's affecting the longer-term outlook for both the jet stream pattern in the North Atlantic, North Pacific too. It's affecting the, the tropical season, and I can't find a strong signal. So I'm not going to make one up just to tell you something. So we'll just watch it together. Got a whole week with Matt and I trying to figure this out. So we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks.